Okay, we are here at an exposition about Negazione and the Italian hardcore scene. Some very important pictures of the scene, especially from one famous band from the Italian hardcore punk scene, Negazione. So first of all, could you just say who you are and explain something about you as a person?
Hi, I'm Roberto, Tax, Farano. Tax is the way I was used to be known for being the guitar player, former member of Negazione. And
Hello, my name is Michele D'Alessio, aka Barox. I used to be the second drummer of the band, and I'm also the curator of the exhibition here at the Neurotitan gallery.
Okay, thank you. So Negazione is one of several Italian hardcore bands from the 80s. Perhaps you can tell us something. Is Negazione starting in the late 70s or in the early 80s?
yes, we started in the early 80s, exactly in 1983. And you just mentioned that here at the exhibition there are several bands from that period of time, let's call it the 80s. They are bands like us. I mean, in those years we were playing almost all together in several cities, and every band was inviting the other bands to their city, and in a way of exchanging possibilities to make shows. First places that were occupied in some places, other more on the side of being a normal club, because in those years everything was different from now, and there was not so many chances like today.
Yeah, let's try to get the situation and to understand the situation and the mood of these years, of this period of the 80s, because you said you were invited by squats, so there was a big squatter scene in Europe, especially in Denmark, but also in Italian, and there were some squatted houses in Germany as well, in West Germany. So what was the situation? You had the possibility to come to other towns and to play there. What was this scene, this punk hardcore scene like? Just to get an impression.
Yeah, the first drive that made all of us get together and start to play in bands was exactly the need to have a place to do these kind of things, to have concerts as well as meetings and know people and have fun, because remember we were quite young when we started, all like everybody's doing things in his young age, but I'm talking about me. I started when I was 16 years old, so and most of us were before the 20s. So in Turin, our city, there were no place, no squat places, and we were involved in the first trying of squat house, things like ending in a few hours because the police were coming and they just let us go, or denounce and some arrests and stuff like that. The first important thing, occupied place in Italy, I guess, was Vios in Milan, and that's the place where also a lot of other bands, all over from Italy, but also from other countries in Europe, and then also the States, were going to play. And we went to play in Vios in Milan many times. After that, we started to get out of Italy. And for example, the way of exchanging friendship and shows and stuff like that was started from in between Italian bands. But then, when the first German bands or Dutch bands were coming to play Italy, as a way of exchange, we started to play in their country as well. So that's that's how we ended up playing in Berlin, for example, for the first place in 1984, where we played in the Knox, together with a band that was playing in Italy probably 6 months before. This band is Porno Patrol, together with another band, maybe other two bands that were playing in Italy as well, Torino, but also Pisa. Pisa, there was Victor Charlie, another important place. And then also we started to play in Amsterdam, where later on we also recorded our records, and then we kept on going after that.
Okay, okay. So Negazione and other bands had a great impact to the German hardcore punk scene. There were bands like the Ski Six or bands like Spermbirds, and they all copied a special style, even a style of behavior, a style of wearing clothes, not the spiked hair, but also the flannel things. And it was a quite interesting scene because it was post-punk, not really punk, but post-punk. But you were a punk, or you had this spiked hair, no?
That was me.
That was you. Ah, okay. So you were at first in the classical punk scene, or?
Not really. I mean, like I kind of like, well, as Tax was saying before when we started to gather together in Torino, there was nothing at all. You know, we were like gathering in urban squares, you know, like city squares, or maybe rehearsal, you know, like in cellars. In our case, when I was playing, you know, with the Negazione, we were rehearsing like in the church, in the back of the church, Valdese church. So, so the scene was all kind of mixed, you know. I mean, obviously I was very young, but I could consider myself beyond of that, you know, because I was spiking, but then, you know, when I had like regular hair, I was wearing a bandana with long hair, so it was kind of like, you know, grungy before the grunge was invented, you know, back then in the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about you and the other bands from Italy, like Raw Power or like Kina, perhaps. These bands had very political lyrics. You too. You were a very political, anti-authoritarian, neo-anarchist band. Is that right? Or because when in the 80s, in comparison to the US scene, you had also very political bands in the US, not only Dead Kennedys, but MDC or DOA from Canada and so on, with very political lyrics. But also I think the Italian scene was very political. Isn't it right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally started before Negazione. I started in another band that was much more political than Negazione. But the thing is, it was actually more political just in the words that were used. Because to me, the name of that band was Quinto Braccio, this fifth arm, like a special section of jail. That was referring to San Vittore jail in Milan.
Oh, okay.
By the way.
It was like mainly thought for political, you know, like involved people.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Political prisoners from the Brigate Rosse or
Prima
something like that?
Linea, yeah,
Okay.
you know, it's like,
Except a few years later, we discovered that was not the case. The fifth arm in San Vittore was not for political,
Ah, okay.
but the
Okay.
theory was still standing. I mean,
Okay.
it was, and so the name of the songs and the titles and the lyrics were Mai più tortura nelle galere, never again torture in jails, or occupazione, and stuff like that. That were slogans used. And me and the drummer at the time in Quinto Braccio, we kind of got fed up with this, got bored with these words that at the end were kind of just empty words, slogans. I mean, we all believed in those things, but we prefer to use not slogans. So we started Negazione also because we wanted to have a more hardcore approach to the music, and without using such slogans, to say more or less the same thing. So you can say that our lyrics were a little bit more personal or poetic, and going on we developed this kind of poetical, if you like, kind of lyrics, still, in my opinion, being anti-authoritarian and anarchist in the theory of it.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe probably you have also to considering like the times back then, because we're talking about the beginning of the 80s. So, well, especially in such a city as Torino, where there was a very strong political movement, more connected to like radical left wings, like Prima Linea, this and that. So we were very young, but we had a totally different approach to politics. Actually we were kind of like in the middle, because on the beginning, people that were more like close to the left wings, they were looking at us, okay, what are they? They couldn't really, figure it out. So also the way to do politics, was totally different. That, as just Doug said, like using the slogans and this and that ended were just like empty words, So, and then yeah, as you said, we started, like with the squatting scene, because back then, like the virus was the only place on Italy that was squatted. So.
Okay, so you also toured a lot in the 80s, perhaps.
Well, I toured the first part of their career, so that
Okay.
it was on the first tour. I mean, like here in Germany, Holland, and Denmark. Yeah.
Denmark. Okay.
Then,
Which were special locations you still remember from this touring?
Well, as you said, he played with us for some more than a year. In '84, we changed again drummers. We played for almost 10 years in all, and we had like 9 drummers, if I remember all of them. So, but yes, we played a lot in all Europe, and also one time in the States in 1990, supporting DOA on the tour that went till the Midwest, East Coast and Midwest. Special occasion, there were a lot. I think maybe one of the most important was the first time we arrived in Amsterdam, and we got to know people there, because, it happened that we considered for a while our second home away from home, because we went there to record our records. The first label, one of Lo Spirito Continua, that is our first album, was the Concurrent record based in Amsterdam. And the people were so nice. There were a lot of places where you could do your thing. And we were in that background that in Torino, in Italy in general, there was nothing at all. So for us, it was like a kind of paradise. See, something like you could do things in a good way, and also differently from other places. In those times, there were also something that bothered a bit to us, that was like people going at show and get drunk all the time, and doing absolutely nothing to make the scene, as we used to call it, grow, and helping each other, and say also something in your lyrics and in the way. I mean, touring and meeting every night different people was something, to grow, to grow yourself as a person, but also to grow a kind of an act that was made out of talking or mailing. For mailing, I mean an envelope of paper with a stamp on it, yeah. and just telephone, these kind of things that needed to grow. Yeah. And when we went there, we just found a small paradise. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was everything, or mostly non-commercial.
Yes.
The most shows were on a level do-it-yourself. Yeah? DIY. It was a big.
Yeah, we were playing in like a Jugendzentrum in Germany, or a youth center, same thing. In Italy or in Holland, there were a lot of these, but they were well organized. The ticket was the price of the ticket was cheap.
Yeah.
And so we started as a do-it-yourself band. Our first record was, our first tape was just pressed by ourselves. Then when we met people that were doing these kind of things in a little bit more organized way, like the Concurrent in Amsterdam, we asked them, and it was kind of a connection, and we decided to let them do it, but it was like people, 3 or 4 guys putting together their resources and their time. It was not a commercial thing.
Yeah.